I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of this workshop, and my presentation is titled Transitions in Traditional Earth Houses in Tamale, Ghana. I am Dr. Irene Appeaning Addo, a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. So in 2019, January 2019, I undertook a research, and these were the comments that I received from my focus group discussants. One person said, our houses are symbols of our culture because they represent us and who we are. So we cannot avoid it, but rather be proud of it. The second remark that came said, that is still our tradition, but in a modernized form, but it still tells our story. According to UNESCO 2021, African traditional architecture is a repository of the heritage, material culture, and history of the people. Paul Oliver claims that it is a conscious process and a well-thought-through production of space that is suitable for the climate, environment, culture, and the community, and that it reflects the social systems and ideologies of the environment. Like every cultural element, traditional architecture of a community is not static, but is constantly undergoing change. And in this case, the change is due to globalization, urbanization, modernization, natural disasters, environmental change, lack of knowledge and skills, and awareness of local communities. Post-colonial government's vision of creating African cities as world-class cities is constantly pushing against traditionality. And African cities display conflicting rationalities as they strive to gain a position on the world map, and yet they want to portray their social difference in multiculturalism. So in African cities, large infrastructure and real estate developments have been used to project the world-class city or the worlding of African cities. Cultural artifacts such as traditional architecture have not been explored as an avenue to project cities and also as a vehicle to blur the urban and the rural divide. Instead, these cultural artifacts are used to deepen the divide between the urban and the rural. However, several studies have demonstrated how cultural elements can become the vehicle for creativity in cities. So, for example, the arts, architecture, and tourism have been explored as elements for urban revitalization. My research question was couched in this way. In what ways can the traditional architecture be viewed as a creative cultural element in city development? And in this research, my aim was to study the changes taking place in the traditional building practices of Babshe in Tamale, and also to identify the drivers of the change and the ways in which contemporary building practices are driving creativity and blurring the urban and rural divide. So Babshe is a peri-urban community in Tamale, and Tamale is located in the northern part of Ghana. It is a dry savanna region, and because it's a peri-urban community, The houses are predominantly earth-built houses with thatched roofs, as seen in the images above. The place is lessly populated. It's not populated, and there's less development in the Wakshe community. So my research approach was committed to multiple views of social reality, whereby a researcher's respondent becomes the expert. So it is his or her view of reality that I sought to interpret and understand, and also to find out the meanings that they make of their social world, following February 2010. So in that framework, I used the quantitative research approach, where I formed focus group discussions and then also conducted in-depth interviews with some of the respondents. I worked with a research assistant who hailed from Tamale and could speak Dagbani, which was the main language that was used in the data collection. A lot of photographs were taken, as well as video and audio recordings made. And in some of the building process, I participated in some of the building or construction activities. So this research was conducted between September 2018 and January 2019. So after all the interviews had been conducted, they were transcribed and the themes were identified. The key findings from my research shows that the traditional earth buildings are an embodiment of the culture, philosophy, and worldview of the people in the following ways. So first, in the thought and planning behind their building construction, in terms of their building orientation, the arrangement and organization of spaces on a compound, in terms of the shape of the rooms, the mode of construction, and the kind of materials that are used, as well as the communalism that was displayed during the construction process. Building typologies are transitioning from earth-walled buildings with thatch roofs to earth-walled buildings with metal roofs, and then to cement brick-walled buildings with metal roofs. And these changes are mainly driven by the following factors. The first is difficulty in accessing local building materials and the perception that earth houses are outmoded and primitive. And this was quite prevalent among the responses of the youth. And so it led to, there was also that perception that staying in such a building connotes poverty or being poor, and they wouldn't want to be associated with that stigmatization. The fact that the builders and the developers were exposed to contemporary building designs, materials, and construction technology from the cities, and then the desire to be modern. And there was also the issue of the social standard or the status of the developer. So in one particular instance, a household that had the head of the household or the man undertaking Hajj pilgrimage, he returned and decided to build a stone-walled or a cement house to depict the fact that he had traveled out of the community and again had traveled to beyond the shores of Ghana. There was also the issue of lack of skills transfer due to poor remuneration. And so the youth in the community were not ready to really learn the skill where they built or constructed with earth, because the remuneration was very low, and it was also regarded as a communal activity. And so you could be paid or just shown appreciation and not necessarily monetary appreciation. So migration of the youth into the cities are introducing contemporary building materials and construction technologies which are being incorporated into the traditional architectures. Knowledge acquired by the young builder that I interviewed through his regular visits to the city and through the different media platforms, that is the internet, television, films, etc., added to his knowledge of contemporary building designs. And we will soon see a comment that he made. So this is resulting in resilient buildings and integration into neighboring development, which means that the youth are likely to continue living in the community. So two comments that came from the fieldwork. First, the youth, I acknowledged that migration indeed affects the way we build our houses today. We used to plaster our houses with the peony and the sandy leaves, but today, most people plaster their houses with cement that has been borrowed from elsewhere. So they recognized that using cement in construction was a borrowed technology. Peony and the sandy leaves are plants that grow in the community and could easily be located just within the community or in the neighboring communities. The builder claimed that my travels and access to information through the social media, as well as cable channels, have significantly affected the way I do my constructions. Whatever I see, whether I travel or through the media, and I feel it is good, then I try as much as possible to adapt it to fit into our traditional housing system, to enhance how they look. And usually, people consult me to give them advice on how they could construct a nice traditional house with some alterations to how it normally would be constructed. So this builder had completed a secondary school. So in conclusion, the challenges encountered by the people have encouraged innovation, yet there are philosophical continuities with existing building practices. So you will find that some of these structures, some of these buildings would use the cement or the blocks to construct the walls. But because they wanted to depict or because they wanted to portray the traditional architectures in their buildings, they would still construct it in that shape and try to roof it, have that conical roofing. And this was very evident in the chief's house. The chief did not live in the community, lived in the city and had constructed a building that had cement walling and at the same time was roofed with metal sheets, but it was conical in shape. However, the respondents wanted to maintain their building traditions, and that is a paradox. So they wanted to maintain their tradition, and yet they also wanted some change because they wanted their buildings to be durable and one that would require less maintenance. Yet they were also deterred by the cost of the modern building materials. And this has resulted in the hybridization of architecture, which have implications for the future of earth buildings' resilience and relevance, as well as sustainability and the sociocultural significance in the people's everyday life. So these hybrid forms, the construction materials and the construction technologies provide us with rich material through which to study the transitions occurring in traditional building practices. Clearly, the construction methods link the urban and the rural through the building materials used and the construction technology, where the builder would travel to the cities, get some ideas, and then would also travel and return to construct other buildings. Thank you very much. I'm grateful for your attention.